Hello, Dog TV. Joe Myers here, back with another Dog TV Chats. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We were having so much fun doing these chats and bringing them to you, entertainment and education. And today we're really diving deep into the science of Dog TV. This upcoming week, I want to tell you about some guests that we have. We have Bill Bookout talking about hemp and CBD and tools to combat pet anxiety. We have Dr. Katie Nelson. She's Chewy.com's chief resident veterinarian, talking about a variety of topics. So come back on Friday, come back on Thursday, and watch some of our previous videos, from entertainers to dog trainers, teaching your dog tricks and tips. But today we're going to dive real deep, not really deep, but we're going to dive into the science of Dog TV. What makes it tick? Why is it so important? What does it do? And so please welcome my guest today, Dr. Nicholas Dodman. He is a professor emeritus at Tufts University, veterinary medicine, the CEO and president for the Center for Canine Behavior Studies, chief scientist here at Dog TV. Please welcome Dr. Dodman.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Dodman. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. I'm in my home, as I'm sure you are, in these COVID days.
We are. What part of the world are you in today, Mr. Dodman?
I'm in southern Maryland,
in
a town called Chesapeake Beach. And if I look to the side, I can see the huge Chesapeake Bay with ospreys diving in and pulling out fish.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. It's a nice view while you're stuck inside. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I want to start at the beginning. How did you become involved in Dog TV in that creation process?
Well, it really all started with a brilliant entrepreneur who's still co-founder, our friend Ron Levy, and he was sitting in his house reading a book or half watching TV, and he noticed his cat was glued to the TV, and he came up with the idea as, how about television for pets? Because my cat seems to be enjoying the screen and the movement on it and things that are going around. And he found me. He linked up with a guy called Guy, who became his said, I believe in you, and what we need is a veterinarian to join the group, which was basically the founder and this guy, Guy. Mm-hmm. And Guy found me, and he said, would you be interested? And I said, I totally believe that this is a great venture, and I'd like to be part of it. So there was the three of us, like the Three Musketeers.
I love it.
And Guy put us in touch with television pundits, in particular, a gentleman, Gillard Newman, who was in charge of the television side of a large company called Jasmine. Mm-hmm. And Gillard said, I get about 40 different opportunities, films that I can make, put on TV programs. He said, and usually it's no. And I saw Dog TV and I went, yes.
Love it.
So that was in the beginning. Now there was four of us with Gillard and the team. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the backroom work was done by the team at Dog TV, Gillard and so on, with the television hookups and stuff. Ron and I continued to work on the science side, and Ron did a huge amount of aspects, which he ran by me. Mm-hmm. We had long conversations about how dogs see and how dogs hear and, content and stuff. And he started making these video clips in 4-minute blocks that were sort of glued together. Mm-hmm. He made the first programming, which was aired, and continued to add 4-minute blocks. So there's so much information out there, so much programming out there, that it's really unlikely that a dog's going to see the same thing twice in a month. We probably see reruns more often than the dog would see a rerun on Dog TV.
This is true. I think it's so good to know that the science is the programming is based on the science, not opposite around. So can you sort of talk about some of those initial studies that are, over 60 scientific studies Dog TV is based on, but maybe talk about one or two of them that sort of talked about this, this innovation in technology for dogs and cats.
Well, it's true. Ron and I were really doing a very deep dive, and he wanted to know everything. He's got a very curious mind.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to know how dogs see. So we found scientific papers. I've not done any primary research on dogs' vision, but we found that there were lots of really erudite papers on how dogs see, for example. And one of the myths that goes around in society is that dogs only see black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that ain't true. They have, cones in the retina, which are color detecting cells. They are different from us in the sense that we're considered to be trichromatic, which means we see in three colors that somehow end up with blends that give us the spectrum of colors that we see. Dogs are dichromatic, so they have a limited access to color vision. And in particular, they don't see the color red as we would see it.
Mm-hmm.
So they might see a sort of shade of gray or something of that nature. But sure, as you go down the light spectrum into the blue, green, and then they start to see things more in these colors, which can be bright and vivid for them.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, that knowledge, having done the deep dive into the sort of really the physiology of vision, that was applied to dog TV in the sense that Ron cleverly tweaked the programming so that the colors that were red were given a different hue that the dogs could see.
Oh,
So
wow.
when you look at on the website, you can look at how we see something and how the dog sees something, which is kind of interesting way of looking at it. But then the enhancement means that the TV that they see with the red switched a little bit to make it a more vibrant color because they can't see the red.
Mm-hmm.
The images of the dog are more spectacular than they would see on just sort of regular TV programming.
Wow. Yeah.
That was one thing.
Yeah. Understanding like how they see and not just sort of filming anything that'd be interesting to us, but then switching it so the dogs can see it more vividly. Has that ever been is that something that you would stand behind, like switching the spectrum so dogs could see it?
Yeah, I mean, whatever Ron did does seem to make it more appealing, but it's not just the mechanics of how they see the screen. It's also the content. So Ron and I talked in the early days about what do dogs like to look at? What kind of content? And um, one thing is, of course, they see the world from their own height, which is
Mm.
only ear high, or a big dog could be bigger than that. So Ron cleverly ran around with cameras filming things from the dog's point of view.
I love it.
But not only that, as I found some studies where they looked at, say, it was particularly apes that were sent into space,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd done a lot of research at NASA about what interests apes. Well, I could have guessed it from first principles, but they like to see their own kind.
Mm.
They like to see other apes doing things that, of
Yep.
course, mean something to them. And they like the terrain that they live in, which is sort of jungles and stuff. So jungles they're familiar with, apes they're familiar with, and that translates perfectly into the dogs because dogs like to see other dogs, but
Mm-hmm.
because they interact with humans, they like to see humans. They like to see humans and dogs interacting. They like to see even city streets. They're familiar with that, and they love to go for runs in the country. So they like to see cornfields and trails through woods. So all of that is incorporated. The content from the dog's point of view, from the dog's angle, in a way that the dog can see it that's enhanced. So we had the vision
Mm-hmm.
and the content and what they like to see covered right from very early days.
Very cool. Let's talk about a little bit about the content because there are sort of three types of programming on Dog TV. Can you talk about those sort of three types and the purpose of them, and why not just one? Why not just relaxation all day? Why not just exposure all day? Why not entertainment all day?
Well, one thing that sort of came to mind, of course, is entertainment. And that
Mm-hmm.
you think of dogs, especially dogs who have a touch of separation anxiety, they're a bit miserable, their owner's gone away. They don't necessarily have to act out with full blown separation anxiety, but it's been shown that about 80% of dogs left at home alone have increases in cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So even though they may not look stressed, they are stressed. And to give them something, which I was doing before I met Ron, trying to enhance this Home Alone atmosphere, I would use the only tools I had was regular TV or tapes and windows with squirrel feeders and stuff like that, bird feeders that squirrels went to. I was trying to enhance their experience. So the entertainment is designed to be upbeat, with upbeat music, with things going on and dogs chasing balls and all sorts of fun stuff, so they can stand there and look at it and, hey, what's he doing? But you don't want them doing that all day long. So then you switch into relaxation, which is actually a larger phase of dog TV. And relaxation has these, picture postcard moving frames of, beautiful, one of them's got a canoe with somebody paddling along with his dog in the canoe. And it's very peaceful. And then you come to the dog's auditions, hearing, right?
Yep.
And research into that. And it turns out that their hearing range is fairly similar to ours. They can hear some high-pitched sounds that we can't hear. But in particular, what would they hear that would help them to relax? And the answer is engineered music, bioengineered. So the music backdrop there, which is created by Dog TV, is what we've known scientifically is dogs like to hear classical music that is sort of soothing, whether it was a harp or more often a piano, something of the classical, as opposed to, say, heavy metal, which is stressing for dogs and me.
Yeah.
But the way they make it bioacoustic is they slow the rhythm down into biological rhythms, so that there's elements of heart rate and respiratory rate, sort of not a beating heart in the background, but if you think of a breathing rate of a dog, when he's resting, about 20 beats per minute, you slow the music down to that kind of beat instead of the normal beat. So some of it sounds to us different and maybe a little slow, but to the dog, that is. I saw one dog simply played bioacoustic music who stood there. He'd been bouncing around and jumping on people. We turned on the music and he had a heart rate meter on his chest.
Yeah.
He got calmer and calmer within seconds, 30 seconds. And all of a sudden he's sitting, sort of sighs a bit, and then lies down on the floor and he's sitting listening to this wonderful music. So the calming phase, they're entertained at one point, they're calmed at another. But as you said, there's a third phase called exposure.
Yep.
And the exposure phase is really, I would call it desensitization, but exposure is probably an easier word for people to remember. And what happens in that phase is they're exposed to things that are part of life. And just to give you one sort of scientific example of how helpful that can be, it was shown in one scientific study that if you take young pups in the early part of the socialization period, when they're just weeks old, and you play them music that's got sounds, sounds of this, that, and the other, and rumbling dishwashers and whatever, that they can assimilate those sounds. They just become part of life.
Yep.
As opposed to hearing those sounds later in life for the first time, perhaps getting startled or frightened. You can actually insulate them, and you can desensitize them. So if they're hearing, for example, a very low, occasional, sort of a thunder noise, just in the distance, immediately followed by something more pleasant, and it's a recurring theme, they can sort of desensitize that. So that's really so we've got them being educated, entertained, and relaxed. And the relaxation is anti-stress, anti-anxiety. And since, we just did a study at the Center for Canine Behavior Studies where 44% of all dogs have issues with anxiety. So that is a major, 44% of 90 million dogs in the country. That's a lot of dogs who have problems with anxiety. So Dog TV could help to, calm them down, make them feel a bit more comfortable inside their own skin.
Yeah, I love the three parts of it. It's not just, imagery that dogs like. It's actually 1,200 layers deep, really wide as well. I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. They hear the name and are like, oh, that's funny, Dog TV. But then dive into the science and then the design of it is important. So we talked about it a little bit, but in your experience, how have you seen it help with anxiety? And you talked about cortisol level. Can you explain to the audience kind of what that is, what that measures, and how Dog TV kind of combats that?
Well, when dogs are stressed, they just like us. They produce stress hormones, and the master of that orchestra is cortisone, um, and it's circulating around in the bloodstream, and it's an indicator of stress. And you could measure it simply with a little saliva swab, like the COVID tests. You just put it in the mouth, take the saliva, and you can measure the concentration. So it's generally held that that is an indicator of stress. That is not the easiest test to do, and we have done some studies where we've had some issues with cortisol itself. But either way, the study from England that they got the testing right and the candidates right, and they showed a very high percentage of dogs were releasing the stress hormone when they were home alone, and the owners would never have known because you go out, you shut the door, and then you come back some hours later, and he might greet you at the door, and you think nothing's wrong. You don't know that even though he hasn't been pulling the curtains down and having accidents on the floor,
Yep.
he's been sitting there stressed out, waiting for you to return. So I've seen dogs I used to use a composite program when I was at Tufts. I've retired now, but I used to put all these things together, appealing to all the senses, which as many as you can with dog TV, as you're appealing to, vision and mentation and audition, hearing, thinking, seeing. I would add for the physical dogs, I would add the sense of touch as another sense that you can appeal to, and I would add the sense of smell as well with lures. And I've seen that maneuver making the home alone environment much more appealing for the dog as opposed to just the sound of a ticking clock. I mean, really turned dogs around who had anxious problems when they were alone. The ones I saw were the worst of the worst, who were, in fact, destroying property, howling, barking, having accidents on the floor, failure to eat, all these signs that are classical of separation anxiety. So it can be reversed.
Yeah, I think that's important to know. We've had a lot of amazing comments. I want to thank everybody commenting here on Facebook, but I want to address one of them in particular. His name is Frank, and he says, my dog doesn't pay attention to it. Sat him down. He acted no different than when I was watching sports or anything else. What advice would you give to Frank? Because this is a new concept. This is a new thing. What's some advice you would give to Frank on, like, obviously we don't know his breed, we don't know anything else about Frank, but what would you give to Frank and people like him in regards to, I turn it on one time, it doesn't work, not for me?
Well, let's be frank. So the thing is, it's true that in the studies we did for Dog TV in the early days, where we're filming dogs that were left alone at home with like 7 different cameras from different angles, and we had students analyze the films. On average, dogs would, if you sort of scale it up, they'd be, like their eyes would touch the television for a total of, say, what would translate as like an hour a day, scaling up from our, hour blocks. That's what you expect, like 15% of the time. But the thing is, it's not continuous looking at the screen. It's a little bit like, I like to think, is when we're having breakfast and we might have a TV over in the corner and there's Good Morning America on, and you're cooking an egg, and then you hear Boeing crashes in forest in the jungle, and you look at the screen like this, and you hold, wow, that's really cool, and then you go back to doing what you're doing. So there were shorter glances, there were longer glances. We added them all up. So sometimes they're kind of looking, as it were, almost at the side of their eye. Sometimes it's just a glance. They can see what's going on without actually sitting in front of the TV and looking at it like a couch potato. There are other dogs who, maybe because of their breed, I mean, we haven't done studies on this, but for example, a scent hound might be more, olfactorily driven as opposed to visually driven. And so he's not so much interested in the picture as sniffing the carpet. But wait, even if the dog, talking to you, Frank, even if the dog's not watching the TV, the fact is he's hearing all the sounds, the squeaky, interesting, not annoying, entertaining sounds. Something different is going on, like popcorn crackling. He's hearing all these things in the entertainment thing, and then he's hearing the relaxation phase. So he's got a musical backdrop, and we all know from the human experience that, let's say, elevator music typically makes us feel a little bit more relaxed when you're standing with 6 people in a crowded elevator, which is why they play that stuff. And shopping malls know that you're walking around. No, you're not looking at the TV, you're looking at the shelves, but you've got this music coming down, and it's scientifically designed to help you, or in some cases even make you shop. So I say to Frank, don't worry so much if your dog's not an actual television screen gazer. He can still get some good benefit from dog TV.
Yeah, we have some really good. I want to thank Rodney. He says, worth every penny, in my opinion. I have cameras on my dog during the day. Maybe he's a scientist in his spare time, and have noticed the difference with and without dog TV. So maybe that's something you can try, Frank. Observe it for a couple of days. What about the old adage that dogs can't see TV?
No.
I know I saw it on a late night show the other day. Someone's like, dogs can't even see it. Like, where did that come from, and where are we at today with that?
Well, it all starts out with the old expression flicker fusion.
Yeah.
So if you take an image and it's flickering, there comes a certain point where the flickers are so close together that it merges into one image. And for humans, that's somewhere around 60 or 70 hertz. Hertz is a cycle per second. So at that rate, humans, instead of seeing the flickering screen like in the old movies, they all of a sudden it comes together and it's fluent. Well, the old TVs in the old days, the old cathode ray tube, they used to flicker at around 60 hertz or maybe 65 hertz. Well, the dogs their flicker fusion rate is much higher, that it's around 70 hertz. So the old TVs they would see as a flickering screen, which is not so appealing to look at. With modern TVs with the faster flicker fusion, now dogs can see a continuous image, just like you and me. They can see a face, a facial expression, a blink, a nod. I mean, it's not just sort of like the old cowboy films with people jerking around.
a little smoother. What advice would you give to somebody who's starting out dog TV for the first time? Maybe somebody shares this video with them. They try it out with their dog. What would be the perfect first day with dog TV?
The perfect first day would be, I guess I'd do two things. I would sit with the dog, and I would watch the dog TV, and I would observe his behavior or her behavior and see whether there's any immediate interest. And sometimes there is. I had friends when Ron and I first started up who would send me a still picture of their German Shepherd sitting on the couch next to them with just glued to the TV. So we've got many such videos showing dogs watching it, sometimes pawing at the screen. So you could see the level of interest, whether it's more like Frank's dog, who's not that interested initially, perhaps, or maybe never. And then you've got the majority of dogs who would be interested to some extent, but you've got to be careful because you could have one of these, I call them the glancers, who might watch for a little bit, go like, wow, that's really cool, and then go and do something else over there and chew on a bone, and then come back for the next thing when they hear another sound or something that draws their attention to the screen, which is actually inbuilt. But the other thing I'd do is I would, number two is I would get some cameras, like in my house I have cameras for other reasons, but I couldn't watch my dog. I've got it for burglary reasons when I'm not around. That they're called Blink, and when there's movement, it will pick it up. And it will send you a message on your phone, or you could use Nest cameras. But if you get some method, we used to do that for dogs who had separation anxiety. We say if you can get some system of remote monitoring of your dog, this will be very helpful going forward to see how they're progressing. So to be able to capture what's going on when you're not there, like that person who just rode into you, that's really helpful because you can, and that's what we looked at in the early days. And you see the dog wandering around, and he goes to the kitchen, and he comes back and jumps on the couch, and he looks at the screen for a while. We start the stopwatch, then he goes like, oh, I'm done with that image, and he jumps down again. So you can see whether there's some interest and whether your dog is calmer, whether he's resting, whether he's sleeping, whether he likes the entertainment phase, whether his ears prick up when the exposure comes. You can learn a lot from being with the dog and remote monitoring.
I love that, sort of monitoring it, understanding what's affecting your dog, and realize that your dog's not going to watch and binge for 9 hours straight and look at the TV, but it'll be sort of overall environment improvement.
Having said that, we did have one dog in the study that was a Maltese Terrier, and it jumped on the couch, and we clocked it watching television 81% of the time. good dog TV content.
I think that would be more than most people right now because we're looking at our phones and we're looking up, and so the dog was a better watcher of dog TV.
By the way, if you put regular TV programming on, we found that if you put on, say, CNN, the dog is really not interested, even though there's great content for us.
Yeah.
Not so much for the dog. It's, talking heads, occasional views of war zones and things, bombs going off, but, so I think it's a great idea to have the dog TV to have that more benefit of all the science that's gone in behind it, because there's this huge difference of time with the real dog TV versus just run-of-the-mill TV programming, which sometimes might even be upsetting.
Yeah, like the loud commercials. We all know commercials are louder, and stuff on the TV, and you don't know and anticipating, and so you're trying to do something good, but because it's not based on scientific studies, it's not based on what actual dogs want. You wouldn't watch cartoons to be entertained, or kids cartoons. You'd watch something that's made for you, and made for people. Thank you so much, Dr. Dodman. You have some veterinarians in the crowd. You have some consumers in the crowd. What are some final tips or advice you'd give to a pet parent who's exploring dog TV or is an advocate of dog TV?
Well, I think just to know, first of all, that it works. It's very comforting to see dog TV. I've got Comcast, and now one of the buttons on there is dog TV. I can see something that I was in on the very early stages of. I can see people can click on that button. I would say, try it. You might like it yourself. A lot of people find it kind of, fun to watch the scenes that are created. It's not, let's say, it's not just for dogs. A lot of people find it very comforting, especially the relaxation phase, and see how the dog reacts to it. I would definitely give them that opportunity. And, I believe there's even, you can get it for a short period of time on trial basis. And, if things work out for you, then you've just done your dog a huge favor.
Excellent. Well, definitely go check it out. Head over to DOGTV.com for your free trial. We are also available on cable networks across the country, so check your local provider. Ask for Dog TV if they don't have it, or you can certainly stream it on Dog TV. Sign up on DOGTV.com and then stream it everywhere. Amazon, Roku, iOS, Android. If you have a smartphone, you can stream Dog TV. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dodman. If people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, where should people find out more information?
Well, my new venture is, you can reach it. The Center for Canine Behavior Studies is most easily accessible just by putting in drdodman.org. That's DRDODMAN.org. And we're doing all kinds of interesting studies that are designed to ensure that dogs have a home for life, that they don't get taken to the shelter or the pound. That's very traumatic for them, and they may not get adopted, or they could spend a long time in there. They might even get put down. So we want homes to be compatible. We want the people to know what they're doing with the dog. We want them to understand their dog. We want them to understand how to deal with any issues that might arise. And actually, dog TV is part of that equation.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to continuing partnering with you. You're advising us on a daily basis and a weekly basis and still connecting with the team. So we certainly appreciate that. If you want to learn more information about the science behind Dog TV, head over to dogtv.com/science. We outline some of the 60 studies, talk about the patents, and then talk about some of the work that Dr. Dodman has done for Dog TV. So we stand behind the science and want to show you everything we have in the background. So head over to dogtv.com/science to check out some of that. And then also please join us tomorrow. Our guest Bill Bookhout talking about CBD and anxiety and what to do and how to observe and how to talk about that. And then on Friday, Dr. Katie Nelson from Chewy's chief veterinary, resident veterinarian. Dr. Dodman, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you
thanks, Joe.
Staying safe and healthy and happy, and we'll certainly connect shortly. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
See you, Joe. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.